Hello, all. So, for this assignment, we're getting ready for the final writing task of this unit and the final writing task of this quarter. So, for this one, we've been looking at throughout this quarter of the elements of storytelling, right? What makes a good story? We've looked at characters, we've looked at theme, we've looked at plot. Now it's time for you to create your own story. So, for this creative narrative pre-write, you're going to kind of flesh out what you're going to be addressing. And by addressing, I mean answering these creative prompts. So you're going to use the following pre-writing in order to gather your ideas before you begin your creative final writing, which will happen next week. You're going to list the ideas and details you want to include in your paper below. And note that the pre-writing is set up to make sure you include all of these required elements, right? If it's in your pre-write, it should be in your final paper. Now let's start at the prompt. So which prompt are you going to select for your narrative? So you're going to click on this link here. It's blue, and it's going to take you to a Google Doc. And I just have it open as a preview here, but you'll see that there's multiple options for you to choose from, right? Some of them are about an illness that wiped out the world's population 200 years ago, and you're in the future, right? Or maybe you're not. One of them is about the year 2121, and there's a nuclear fallout. Another one is about a meteor that struck the earth and forced civilization underground. And another one is about wildfires that have engulfed the majority of the land, and that your character is attempting to set board for a ship in the new in-ocean settlement, but doesn't know that there actually is no ocean settlement. So those are the prompts that you're going to see. And you'll see here that there's paper requirements, right? Proper formatting, MLA, we'll go over that again. 2 pages minimum, and then needs to be double spaced Times New Roman. And it should include all elements of the plot: exposition, beginning of the story when you describe the setting, set the mood to introduce characters, rising action, 2 to 3 events that lead the reader towards the most exciting point or the climax. And they have to happen before the climax happens, right? You don't have to rise up to it before you just twist the story. Climax, the most exciting part of the story. Following action, what are the events at the end of the story and what happens after the climax, right? We want to ease into that resolution. And then finally, of course, the resolution. Make sure to include a way that the main character has changed, grown, or learned something after what happened to them, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a positive story. Think of Sound of Thunder, right? Eccles learned something, knew about what happened, right? But it's not necessarily a positive ending. Include a narrative conflict, and it has to include one, right? So it should be character versus character, or character versus self, or character versus society, depending on your prompt and depending on how you want to gear your story. Also, it must include at least 3 of the literary devices below, and you have to highlight them within your writing. So of course, I'll be going over this the closer that we get to the actual writing project itself, but I wanted to give you an idea of what you should be looking forward to on the horizon. So whatever prompt you choose from that Google Doc that we just looked at here, you're going to paste it right here in the prompt section in the purple box. Then you're going to do this for your setting. This should look very similar, right? This is the same thing that we did when we looked at setting when that guy was walking through the forest with his dog. What do you see? What can you hear? What can you feel? And what's the mood? Remember, mood is that feeling, right? What feeling kind of evokes for you? Is it creepy? Is it spooky? Is it bright? Is it happy? Exposition. Remember, that's the story, or I'm sorry, the beginning of the story, right? So how will your story begin? This is a great place to start describing your setting, mood, and introducing characters. And this can be done in bullet point form. It can be done in sentence form. It depends on how you want to plan it. Narrative conflict. What type of conflict is the main character or characters faced with? Is it internal or external? You can refer back to this activity for support. If you remember, that's the one where we watched those videos, right? Rising action, 2 to 3 events that lead the reader toward the most exciting point or climax. These events must happen in order for the climax to happen, right? We need to lead to that big bang, basically, right? Climax, the most exciting part of the story that will also include a major action or main turning point of the story, right? So you have that rising action, it's leading up to something, and then boom, something happens. The falling action. What are the events at the end of the story and what happens after the climax, right? So you have your climax for, if we're using a Sound of Thunder, that was when the T-Rex happens, right? But the falling action was you have the T-Rex, and then what happens? Eccles steps off the path, they get back onto the ship, and Travis is angry that Eccles did that, right? And that's the falling action, right? What happens after the climax? So the dinosaur is obviously the climax. That's what he paid to get there. That's the whole reason why we went back in time. Resolution, our last step. How will you include a way that the main character has changed, grown, or learned something new after what happened to them? And again, this doesn't have to be in a positive light. If we look at A Sound of Thunder, that is not a positive ending. However, Eccles did learn something about what happened to him, right? He understands why he's being shot at the end. He literally changed the entire course of history. So I hope you guys find this helpful. This should be a pretty good way to flesh out your narrative before you begin it. And if you have any questions on this, obviously feel free to email me. We can always set up Zoom office hours if you'd like the additional support.